Welcome back to the Skip Barber eRace series as we head to Brands Indy for round 3 of the season. Fantastic venue for us to head to today. Slightly different than Daytona, what we expect it to be, but nevertheless, we are here at the tiny track in West Kingsdown, Kent in the UK. We've had a fantastic season so far, but all 4 races have been won by Johnny Guindy. Will that streak be ended today? Before we get into the racing though, we've got a message from the tyre provider of the Skip Barber Racing School. Goodyear believes that movement drives us forward, that every mile travelled is a step in the right direction. But Goodyear also knows the importance of a rest stop, in taking a breather to pause and reflect on the road ahead. Sometimes that's all we need, a short pit stop before the open road opens again. So when you're ready to get back to movement, Goodyear will be there to help you start moving again. Visit Goodyear.com to learn more. Goodyear, more driven. For today, though, myself, Lewis McGlade, alongside me, Elliot Bishop has always been. Elliot, welcome to another new track for you.
Yeah, just another curveball. I know that we were planning on going somewhere else, but now we're here at Brands Hatch, which is actually pretty exciting based on just the length of the track. The circuit's only 1.1 miles in the configuration that we're running today, so it's going to be a lot different than Spa, which was what we ran in the second rendition of the series. So it'll be definitely interesting to see how Guindy can hold his lead that he has been holding throughout the series. He's dominated in the first two rounds of the series, ultimately finishing in first and pretty much leading the entire time. But the guy that we're looking at now, Sven de Vries, I believe this is Sven's car.
Indeed, it is Sven.
He did give him a run for his money. He gave Guindy a run for his money in Spa. So let's see if the shorter track does present opportunities now for a little bit of change.
Well, Sven de Vries, we'd had the pre-qualifier. The qualifier to get into this was done at Daytona, where we were supposed to race, and Sven was feeling very, very confident there. So he took the top qualifier spot, so he's got the number 1 on his car for this weekend's racing. Comes across the line to go into 4th position. Not too happy about coming here to Brands Hatch. Has raced here a few times before. Fun fact about Sven de Vries, it's his birthday today. Racing on his birthday. Proving that he's not got a life. Fantastic work. No, I'm joking. He's a good lad. He's not super duper confident around here, but I'm sure he'll do fine. Like you say, he did give Guindy a run for his money, and now put Guindy in the number 2 car, showing that maybe this championship's not going to go all Guindy's way.
Yeah, I mean, it would be great to see if Sven has the speed and the pace to really challenge Guindy in that first position. Obviously, as we've said, Guindy has been dominating as he from race to race. Not only is he performing at a high level, but then he's going back and he's working with the guys at Skip Barber. They're giving him real-time feedback, and he's able to develop. So we've actually seen a lot of the field increase their pace, increase in skill just overall. But Guindy is also utilizing that talent or that skill and talent that is under the roof of Skip Barber. So Skip Barber bringing that to to this series, obviously working with each one of these drivers individually. It's not really, the racing is a big part of this, but at the end of the day, a lot of these guys that qualify, just the opportunity to work with Skip Barber in general is going to help them in the long run and just help them develop as drivers. So I think that is quite a win.
Yeah, we've got quite a lot of the drivers, by the way, joining us as it was last time out. There's a few different drivers. A lot of people have been very busy considering how the weekend's gone. I know me and you, Elliot, have been quite busy over the weekend.
Yep.
There are some new drivers, though. Of course, most of them are towards the bottom end of the qualifier. Austin Edwards managed to qualify quite high in the pre-quali. But then there are a few new ones, Jordan Spears, Marcial, Fernandez, Jensen, and Swank and Doman are the new drivers to join the grid. I'm sure they've taken quite a lot of instruction from the Skip Barber instructors for the racing school. I'm sure for the likes of Guindy, de Vries, they're getting used to it now. They're still learning fresh little bits, but they're getting used to this kind of instruction, as they already kind of know what to go through their head before even a word is spoken.
Right, and I think that really is what it comes down to. The longer you can maintain your spot in the series, looking at Guindy, Cadwalder, de Vries, Kerstetter, Gomez Jr., Chattini, these are all names that we've seen before, at the top of the row. And the more you can qualify for this series in each round, the more time you get to spend with the Skip Barber guys. So those guys have a little bit of an advantage here coming into it, just based on the amount of time that they've had to, behind the wheel of this car, but also working, close in with Skip Barber. And I think when it comes down to it, though, and we have a little bit of a spin out. This is qualifying, so there's a lot on the line. But luckily, the way that we're doing qualifying and the race is that it is a set amount of time, and this track is very fast, only being 1 mile. So we're probably going to see quite a bit more as far as traffic and laps are concerned than we have seen in the past. But going back to my point, this series, just in general, the way that it works is that instead of it being something that you have to, qualify outright for the entire series, you ultimately are qualifying round to round. So what happens is Skip Barber deploys a server. It's a $20 entry fee. Anyone can do it. You basically pay your fee, and you get entry into a set of courses, the server that we have deployed for this. And the top 20 times from that server are ultimately picked for the driver to move on. So what's interesting is that there's an opportunity for pretty much anyone that has a steering wheel at home and $20 to spend to ultimately get into the series. And it's interesting to see actually quite a few of the same drivers consistently reappearing. But it is a very interesting format because, if you don't qualify and you won the last round, then you just don't get a drive in the next session. So you have to earn your way every single, basically step of the way.
Yeah, you've got to constantly deliver in the Skip Barber eRace series, and that's what Johnny Guindy's doing at the top of the timesheet. Championship standings, by the way, Guindy on top, 35 points in each of the previous races. Sven de Vries and Thomas Cadwalder are joint on 118 points in second position, by the way. I didn't know this until last round, which is terrible for me. I really should have known it. But obviously with the prizes on offer, there is actually another prize, which I didn't realise, but the hard charger, so the guy that gains the most laps, I think also gets a day of Skip Barber tuition in the real world. One of the hard chargers from last round, Rory McDuff, got the hard charger award, so has that to now go and play with at some point. Not here today because he's been a little bit busy winning 24-hour of Le Mans race.
Yeah, he just got off the
he's been a busy
boy. Wait, when was that? So that was at 4 a.m. my time. So that was
Olivier Fortin and Felix Anton Fortin. Those also aren't here for the same reason. They were both taking part in that race.
Okay, so the 410s, gotcha. So there was a 24-hour of a Le Mans, and it just ended right before. Ultimately, those guys are sleeping, so that's probably why they're not here this week. But yeah, definitely interesting things happening all over the span of the online motorsports e-racing. Just it's great to see. We're seeing just on camera, obviously during this qualifying session, we're seeing a few drivers ending up in the grass. I wonder how much the qualifying at Daytona is going to affect these guys, just because they haven't had a ton of time to be able to practice on this track, right? Like we mentioned, they were doing the qualifying. We were planning on doing the race at Daytona, but based on a few technical limitations and issues, we ended up swapping over to our backup, which is the track that we're at now. So these guys have been practicing on Daytona, and this, for some of them, may be their first time actually seeing this track. So it's a bit of we might see a bit of a learning experience for, or the process of these guys learning as they, continue to put in some hot laps.
This is Great Britain's Lime Rock, mate. This is what it's all about. I don't know if you've ever heard of this circuit. I'm sure there are a few people here that genuinely haven't heard or even seen this circuit before. I think you're absolutely right. It's not the most common of circuits, more focused on the British Touring Car Championship, as well as doing some things for DTM. We'll watch Sven de Vries cross the line. I don't think it's going to be an improvement. No, it is not. So stays in third position. It's a track I've been to here. I've been to this track a couple of times. I was actually here in March. Earlier in the year, doing a bit of a job interview, so that's fun.
Yeah, I've actually I actually do recognize this track. I haven't physically driven it, obviously, but back in I think it was like F1 2012, I believe, they did.
It's 13. It was in 13.
Yeah, it was in 13 because they did like the throwback in that game. So I've actually driven this track quite a bit, but not this orientation. I never did the Indy orientation. Like right here, you would drive further up to the left and then go to the back side of the towards Pilgrim's Drop, and then I think it's called like Hawthorne Bend. and then you have that whole back end. Yeah. So that's I've driven that portion of it, and I actually really like this track. It is very fast and it's a lot of sweeping corners, but it is believe it or not, like I used to set up this track to do like endurance type stuff, so like super long stints, which was pretty fun. It is a very, very fun track, especially if you're in a fast car.
Which these are quite fast. They're very light. They're actually like these cars will be pretty accustomed to this with the downforce and stuff. It's going to make overtaking an absolute nightmare. But I'm sure we'll see some daring moves into Paddock Hill Bend as a few drivers move up position. I think that's short up into 6th place in the number 11 car. Nice one. Saxon into the barrier. Not so great for him. Qualifying is over. We're about to get ready for the 2:15-minute race, and it looks like Johnny Guindy serving up another one. That's another pole position, 3rd consecutive pole. For Guindy, this time though in the number 2 car rather than number 1 that he's more accustomed to. He's not been knocked back by that number 1 that Sven de Vries is coming to the event with.
Yeah, it's interesting because typically Guindy is the guy that is holding that number 1 number plate. We've seen him qualify in first pretty much every single session, just from like from the $20 entry that he pays. We've seen him come in with the number 1 number plate, and then beyond that, he just holds first position pretty much the whole time. We've seen Sven de Vries come up and challenge him. So it is actually interesting to see Guindy with the 2 plate, seeing as Sven de Vries was able to beat his time over at Daytona. But we'll see if Sven de Vries now with this new track will be able to maintain that first place number plate and really, maybe if he gets in slots in behind Guindy or Cadwalder, might be able to learn a thing or two and ultimately, over the few laps in this first race, come up to pace and catch and fight Guindy.
Awesome lap by Hunter Manley, 5-minute 49.4. Good shout. That's not a legit time, but I think I've raced with Sven de Vries around here. It was in 2015, so a very long time ago, 5 years ago. He was rubbish then, so it's all good. I could actually battle with him. Same format as always, by the way. So we've wrapped up this 10-minute qualifying session. We'll be getting ready for a 15-minute race. You can see there, Guindy going to be starting from Cadwalder, a front row that we've seen a few times in the running of the Skip Barber eRace series. Sven de Vries, Kerstetter. So the top 5 pre-qualifiers are in the top 5. Good work from them. Whether they're going to be able to hold that in the race, well, we'll have to find out, and we will do after this.
And we're back with race number 1 coming up in round number 3 of the Skip Barber eRace series. We are here at Brands Hatch, and we have Guindy on the pole position again. Just behind him is going to be Cadwalder, and then in the 3rd position is going to be Sven de Vries. My name's Elliot Bishop. I am joined here by Lewis McGlade. Lewis, how do you think this race 1 is going to go?
I think Guindy's going to lead strongly. We're about to have the lights come on, starting this time with a number 2 on his car. Lights are coming on, 5 of them, and then the run down towards Paddock Hill, or 6 actually. The run down towards Paddock Hill for the very, very first time. It is going to be tight. It's a massive drop-off on the right-hand side. Decent start from Guindy. Going to have a clear run from Cadwalder, who's getting a little bit of attack from the number 1 car. Sven de Vries looking down the inside as we run through Paddock Hill Bend. Watch out for the apex there, as there's a massive curve on the inside up towards Druid. grids for the first time. Sven de Vries straight down the inside in the number 1 car. Fantastic work. A bit of a dive there into Druids. It's going to open him up, though. Coming down towards Graham Hill Bend. It's still Cadwallader down the inside, going to go for a cutback. Sven de Vries back in the 3rd position. They run all the way over the exit of that. There's a lot of AstroTurf, a bit of concrete out there. It should be easy for them to run out wide there. They've got to watch out for some slowdowns, though, so be careful, guys. Gindi, though, leading by 0.8 of a second as they come through clearways for the first time. Classic Gindi start. Cadwallader, though, under a lot of pressure from Sven de Vries. This track is pretty heavy on tyre wear, considering the constant turning, though, so they've got to be careful. We've seen that bite some people, Elliot.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that we've really seen in this series, just like you were mentioning, is that the maintaining of the tires is a really important process for these drivers. Not only, do you have cars in front of you and behind that are constantly battling for position, but maintaining your tires and your temperatures is ultimately is the way that you're going to be able to finish the race with this 15-minute session that we have. And every time that we've seen a driver spin out, we see a cascading effect as soon as they overheat their tires, where ultimately they can't run the same pace and the same line that they previously did. And when they try to do that, a few mistakes end up happening. One thing with this track that I did mention a little bit earlier is just the distance, right? We're coming from Spa, which is quite a long sweeping. You have long sweeping straightaways. You have plenty of corners, and with this track we're talking about like 45-second lap time. So one question that I'm gonna be paying attention to, and I have, is the fact that I'm guessing we're gonna see some lap traffic actually in this race, especially with 15 minutes and these 45-second lap times. I mean, it's not going to take much for Gindi to end up running into the back end of the back of the field. So we'll see how he's able to navigate that as we get there, but it could actually raise a few opportunities for Sven de Vries and Cadwallader, who are currently sitting just behind Gindi. We've seen Gindi in the past ultimately create a bit of a gap, and then as soon as he's able to hold that gap, he's basically untouchable for the rest of the race. But this traffic will introduce a bit of a question mark, as we're going to see that later in this race.
Yeah, I just saw Swears moving up past Jensen in the background of this. Jordan Swears from Austin, Texas, doing some good stuff. Up a few positions. We saw Sidney Scattini dropping his way down the order, now running in 13th position. Matt Buser, eNASCAR Coca-Cola Series driver, moved his way up into 7th place in the number 13 car. Very nice work. I think there might be a threat of lap traffic, although considering these guys are all the top 20 qualifiers, they're all pretty close on pace. Doman, though, or Doman rather, not really the quickest at the moment in the number 20 car. Might come under a threat of being lapped. Another faster lap from Cadwallader, though, closing in on Gindi. You'd have to assume that Gindi's looking after his tyres to try and make sure that he can do the entire 15-minute distance without too much strife. We're looking backwards from Swears. You've got Jensen there. You've got Bear as well. Spinner in the background. Big spinner in the background. That's Scattini. Scattini got hit.
Yep, he got collected.
It was Jablonski.
Yep, Jablonski ended up, I believe it was Jablonski, as we're going to see him drop in the order back to 17. He's got Scattini just behind him in the 8 car. But yeah, it seemed that Jablonski just lost a little bit of control and ended up spinning himself out and collecting a few cars there. With this track, just in general, from my experience, obviously I haven't run this exact orientation, but it seems just from the long sweeping corners, and you just never feel super stable, right? You're never actually holding a line or a straight trajectory besides when you're on the Brabham Straight, when you're coming across the line. So it's going to be really interesting to see how these guys, ultimately hold on to the car, because the second that you lose your racing line, you can't really, you can't really reassess the situation until that you get back onto the straight, because ultimately the second that you're off your racing line, there's not a lot of time and not a lot of space on this track to be able to, set yourself back up. The second that you make a mistake, there's another corner right ahead of you. So you're constantly turning, you're constantly trying to maintain speed and pace. And it's going to be very interesting to see how Gindi is able to maintain his lead here, especially with the likes of Sven de Vries and Cadwallader just in behind. But not to overlook Saxon, who actually had quite a start. Him and Gomez Jr. just off the start of the race were able to pick up a few spots. Gomez and Saxon hopped up quite a few spots, but it looks like Kerstetter is now able to put himself in between them.
Yeah, it's been a good launch from Saxon, the number 4, now running in 4th position. Cadwalder's pace at the moment is electric. He's catching Gindi. We were thinking that Sven de Vries might be the one to challenge. It looks like it's going to come from Thomas Cadwallader, putting in an excellent opening stint here. First 5 minutes of the race down. It's a hard track to race here at Brands Indy. We've got a car in the pit lane. I think that might be Swank. And I think Scatini and Swank are both in the pit lane. It's a hard track to overtake at, not going to lie, and I don't pull punches when I say this. I really hate the circuit when it comes to driving it. I like Brands GP, absolutely hate Indy. I'm racing here on Tuesday night, not looking forward to it at all. It's a hard circuit. It is relentless pressure. And so from Gindy's point of view, it's very easy to make mistakes in this race. And with Cadwalder only being half a second back, it's very, very easy to run too wide into Paddock Hill, into Clearways, the final corner on the circuit. As we look at Cadwalder, look at how close they get
the slipstream
on the exit there. They're running right out onto the curb. And believe me, if you get a wheel even slightly too wide there, you get pulled straight out towards the tyre wall.
Yeah, and I think that's really with this track especially. I mean, I coined the term back straightaway because there's always a back straightaway on a racetrack. But here you're ultimately, just like I said, you're turning constantly. And if we can hang out here on this onboard, you'll see that there's not much time to really reassess the situation right here. You know, it might look like a straightaway, but you're constantly sweeping just to the left side. So you're constantly under pressure as a driver. You're constantly having to focus. There's really no time for a reset mentally, and that's typically what you do as a driver on a straightaway. You're changing settings on your steering wheel when you're in a physical car, but you really don't have that opportunity here. You're constantly under pressure and constantly having to focus because you're always inputting some sort of steering into the steering wheel. And as we see Edwards coming to the end of the front straightaway, there is this long sweeping right-hand corner as well. So there's just a lot of complicated corners where you have to maintain pace and you have to hold speed. And I think the guys that have raced single gear go-karts will definitely understand that the less input, the better.
Yeah, in these cars, this track, believe me, it's very easy. Edwards and Baddy switch. Baddy's dropping down the order. Baddy's dropping down the order. I think he's had an incident there. Oh, he has out of Graham Hill as well. I think he's maybe just lit it up on the exit of the corner, spun off to the inside, maybe clipped the wall. Swears as well, dropping down order on Nicholas Short. Jensen as well, dropping down the order. Swears is actually dropping down a few positions here. In 11th place now, he's running. It's all going a bit Pete Tong here. It's all going a bit crazy. For those of you though sat at home thinking, oh, these British tracks are rubbish. Next week we're going to Silverstone, though. It's a much better track, promise. So we're all right there.
Debatable.
Debatable? No.
I know that
it's a laser scan Silverstone as well. So
everyone loves
a laser scan
Silverstone.
Brands Hatch. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Silverstone's probably one of my least favorite tracks, it's one of my least favorite tracks. Just I don't know why. It's just one that I've never liked.
Friends.
Yeah, it's just
what's wrong
rubbish.
with it?
It's rubbish.
Do you like old Silverstone, new Silverstone, any of it?
I've only driven the newer circuit, but I don't know what it is. It's just that not my cup of tea, so to speak. You know, it's just of all the tracks that I readily play, or that I select, that's just one that I always just I just try to avoid like the plague. Just not interested.
You've lost points in my book, mate. We're on board with Saxon as we're staring at the back of Sven de Vries, who's under quite a bit of pressure here from Saxon. Kerstetter as well is right on the back of this. Gomez Jr. This top six have effectively pulled away from the rest of the field. Matt Booster in a world of his own, 3 seconds to the car behind, 2.5 seconds to the car ahead. He's just cruising around in what would be a fantastic 7th place, by the way, for the number 13. Really learning quite a lot from the Skip Barber instructors. Here's Gomez Jr. On the back of Kerstetter. Kerstetter is currently 5th in the championship, and these two are battling for the 4th place, for 4th place in championship. Nathan Saxon currently 4th place, 106 points to his name as he looks down the inside of Druids. Doesn't fancy a go there. Was almost committed, a bit of a lock up though. And Kerstetter is in 5th place in championship, only 3 points behind Nathan Saxon. So there's a bit of a fight there. Where's Gomez? Gomez Jr. is in 6th place, a good 20 odd points back. Here's Sven de Vries getting attacked quite a bit from Saxon. Speak of the devil.
Yeah, Sven's finding himself in the eyes of Saxon now, and as you can see, there's not even half of a car. There's not even maybe a foot in between the back of Sven de Vries's car and the 4 car of Saxon. And now Saxon's going to look to the outside here as they're going to be coming down just into the first corner. So Saxon didn't really see much of an opportunity, but he is still in the money. The thing that they have to pay attention to is the fact that Kerstetter's just in behind. I mean, ultimately, we've seen this a few times in this series where you get 3 cars battling and the guy in the middle ends up getting sandwiched if one guy misses their braking zone, that being the front or the guy in the back. But one person not to write off too quickly is Gomez Jr., who is actually the dark horse of this series. I'm calling it out. We've seen him very quick, and he's had a few issues in round number 2 when we were at Spa, where he ended up dropping down to the order. But we saw him ultimately finding his pace the longer that he drove. So if he can hold it together here, we might actually see him ending up on the podium, because De Vries, the first car that you're seeing here coming into frame with that one panel, that is the guy that is in 3rd position now. Cadwalder and Gindi are way off into the distance, 4 seconds ahead of De Vries. So if Gomez Jr., the car that's the 4th in this view here, just coming into frame right there on the left side, he is ultimately in the position where if De Vries makes a mistake, or Saxon makes a mistake, or Kerstetter makes a mistake, all 3 of those cars are going to be bait for Gomez. And we've seen Gomez make big moves on packs before. So if Gomez can hold it together here, he's in a good position to end up, finishing this first race on. And was that Saxon just defending against Kerstetter? Okay.
Kerstetter was trying to make a move going around the outside of paddock here. It is possible to do so. It's more easy to go for a nice cutback, though. At the top end, Gindy's starting to pull away bit by bit. We've got 3 minutes and 17 seconds left of the race. I've got a question for you, though, Elliot. I gave you a fact 14 hours ago about this circuit. Do you remember what it was?
That this is your favorite circuit in the entire world.
That wasn't what the fact was. It was when it was raced. Well, come on, I'll give you a little bit. It was when it was like raced back in the 30s on motorcycles. Do you not?
Okay.
Are you not paying attention? They used to do this track backwards. Imagine going up Paddock Hill Bend.
Oh, that's right. It's they used to race bikes here, right? They did.
They still do. But it used to do it backwards. Yeah, they still race bikes here. British Superbike races around the circuit.
And there goes a body again.
Not good. Unfortunate half spin there at the it's a very lazy spin like that. There's not really much you can do about it. It does get back on the road in 14th position, back up the battle for this basically train for 3rd place as Sven de Vries once again. Saxon as they head up towards the Clark curve, and then it's not Clark, it's that's Surtees. Thank you. Ed's really throwing me off on that. Oh, who's that? Number 12, was it?
I believe so. I didn't see anyone drop into the order. It may have been Doman because he didn't. There wasn't a change on the tree, unless the tree is bugging up for us right now. But I think that was Doman. He's losing a bit more time now. So yeah, I think he ended up just spinning on the last corner, and he luckily didn't collect anyone else. I think that the rest of the traffic ultimately just went around him there. But yeah, like I was saying, Gomez Jr. Surprise, surprise. Now he is in the battle. For this, currently it's a battle for about 3rd and 4th position, but I think all 4 of these drivers are really gunning for that podium finish that De Vries is currently holding. And De Vries is in probably the worst position here, as he is in that 3rd position, but he has 4 guys trying to pressure him to ultimately make a mistake. So we'll see if Saxon, as we mentioned earlier, these drivers haven't had a ton of experience on this track, right? It's debatable. Who the expert is here, because we haven't had these long qualifying or practice sessions, which we typically have before prior to these races on Sunday for these drivers. So now that they're here, we don't really know who those experts are. So I think if I was a guy like Saxon or De Vries or Kerstetter, and maybe I didn't have as much experience at this track, it would come a little bit later. And as I would sit behind the car ahead, I might learn a thing or two and figure out where those places I could make a pass, like where I can make that happen. And then all that it takes is a few laps where I make that attempt, and then maybe it works, and then maybe it drives me off the track. But ultimately, I think right now race number 1 is the time to do that, because wherever you finish this race, that is your grid starting position for race number 2.
Certainly is. Of course, we've got 25 seconds left of this race, and this will be the final lap of it. I thought it was going to be close with the checker flag, but I'm pretty sure now we're right on board with Guindy, who's got a bit of traffic getting in the way. I think that might be Martial, but it is Guindy leading the way quite comfortably from Cadwalder. He's been under a fair amount of pressure. They dive their way past, come up to clear ways once again, and after 15 minutes, a shock to almost no one, Johnny Guindy takes 5 race victories back-to-back. Incredible start to the championship. Cadwalder, though, bites back in the battle for second. Sven de Vries, a drag race to the line, takes the final step on the podium. Saxon, great drive, not quite good enough to take the podium away. And Kerstetter rounding out the top 5. Johnny Guindy, though, 5 race victories on the bounce. What an incredible start. Hunter Manley, after starting in last place, no less, was the 20th qualifier back in Spa, came into this one the 6th qualifier, struggled in at the actual live qualifying session we had. We've got a crash as 2 cars are off here. That's Ibadi. That's Ibadi Bear, and the number 15 coming through.
So
that's Swears.
It's or that's not the 15 car. Sorry, he's in 15th position. But yeah, it looked like a body ends up spinning out again. But and this is what I was talking about. I think with a lot of these drivers, they're just going to have to really just find their paces. Ultimately, this race number 1, based on the the format that we're running here, where your race 1 doesn't dictate points, right? It doesn't really. It's not that it doesn't mean anything, because it's ultimately a race that dictates where you're going to start on the second race, and that second race is really where everything matters. That's what's coming up. That's what really these drivers have in their focus. And at the end of the day, your starting position, a lot of the time, it creates opportunities for you. The further ahead of the row that you're starting, the more opportunities that you have, the less likely that you're going to be battling. But I think coming up, Cadwalder wasn't that far off Guindy. We've never seen someone able to hang on to Guindy when he is running in first position. We've seen Sven de Vries be able to battle door to door with him and hold him off when we're back at Spa. But we've never seen someone keep the pace of Guindy through a track and maintain less than a second gap in between. So that is something to pay attention to here. Cadwalder might have the pace to beat Guindy here. 5 wins in a row, though, is something very difficult to challenge.
Yeah, it's an impressive streak to open the season. Of course, it doesn't mean that we've got a champion in waiting, because believe me, it can fall apart very quickly. The point structure here, it's only 3 points between victory and second place. 35 points goes the way of Guindy. 32 points goes the way of Cadwalder, and 30 points goes the way of Sven de Vries. So it's pretty tight in points. If you have one bad race, if you have a bad race 1, that's going to cost you not only in race 1 but in race 2 as well. That was the point that you were getting to. So you can't afford a bad race 1. You need to make sure that you're putting everything together at the top end. Such a tight margin between de Vries and Saxon, Kerstetter and Gomez Jr., all separated by 0.7 of a second. Come the Chelly first race at Brands, but coming up shortly, we'll get racing again. Another 50-minute race coming up after this.
Welcome back. It is race number 2 coming up in the Skip Barber eRace series, round number 3. If that's the best way to say it, I think I could have organized that a bit better. But we are here for race number 2 in round number 3 of the Skip Barber eRace series. I am Elliot Bishop, and I'm joined here by Lewis McGlade. Lewis, what are you expecting to see in race number 2? Obviously, Johnny Guindy on that pole position, but Cadwalder and Sven de Vries right behind him.
Sven de Vries's pace, I know he'll be watching this back, and he'll always message me with how dare you say that, but your pace was not good there, pal. He said he's not really a massive fan of the circuit. Same front row as it was last time then. Gindy and Cadwallader. Gindy on the inside in the yellow, Cadwallader on the outside in the blue. Cadwallader's pace was mighty impressive in the previous race, and we'll see if he can take the challenge to the number 2 car of Johnny Gindy. One more time then, 15 more minutes to take us on this Brands Hatch adventure. Run down towards Paddock Hill once more. It's such a short run. It's going to be crucial to get that good start. Gindy away well. Cadwallader away well in the background as well, as we all funnel out and try and find our way through down the hill through Paddock once again. Number 1 car of Sven de Vries also picking up a decent start. We saw a lunge from him into Druids, turn 2. On the first lap last time. Oh, Gindy's run a little bit wide, opening the door ever so slightly to Cadwallader. Cadwallader's got to the outside of him as they run down towards Graham Hill. Not quite enough. Gindy's going to hang on. Cadwallader leads De Vries, Saxon, Kerstetter, Gomez Jr., Busa, Manley.
Ooh,
nice start from Manley. Oh, who's that? It's Busa. Matt Busa down in the background, down to 14th place now, all the way down to the back of the grid. Massive crash out of Graham Hill.
Yeah, and it looks like Jensen may be also off the track because Busa was able to recollect his car after the entire field passed by, and he seems to still be in the order. But Busa is actually finding a few places just back behind as Doman's going to drop back, and now we're on board with Sven de Vries. And look at this. This is exactly the situation that these guys need right now. They need to be able to keep Gindy in their sights. They don't want to let him get away. And you know what I've noticed with Gindy? Every time that we've gone to his onboard in lap number 1 and we're looking back to the driver in second place, there's always like, oh, no, who was that?
Is that Sven de Vries?
Yeah,
it is Sven de Vries and Cadwallader. Sven de Vries and Cadwallader. And there's more contact going on up ahead. Who's involved in that? It's Hunter Manley as well. Sven de Vries, Cadwallader, contact coming out of Graham Hill Bend. All 3 of them dropping massively down the order. Sven de Vries down to 17th place. Not sure what happened. Absolute carnage. Allowed Gindy to run away and look for number 6 in a row. Saxon in second position now, promoted ahead of Kerstetter. That is not the birthday present Sven de Vries wanted.
Yeah, that is not that definitely shook up the order quite a bit. I was just talking about Cadwallader's opportunity really to keep Gindy in his sights, because Gindy's able to gap quite a bit within the first lap, and that was really what I was getting at, was the fact that Gindy, every time we're looking at him on the first lap, he creates distance within a few corners. So I was hoping that would prove different, as Cadwallader was able to keep it a bit closer than normal. But I think that just a small mistake ultimately put himself, Cadwallader, and de Vries all the way in the back of the row. Luckily, it's early in the race, so it's not all thrown away for these guys. They have lots of time to, they ultimately have the entire race ahead of them. But yeah, definitely not a position you want to be in, especially with the consistency from most of these drivers, right? They work, they drive on a lot of these tracks. Obviously, this is a newer track, so it's a little, that's why we're seeing more of these wrecks and mistakes being made, because they haven't had the time to work on this track specifically. But I think, when we look at these drivers, ultimately, as Edwards actually makes up a spot here on Jablonski, but Jablonski's going to come back and actually go to the inside here, and Jablonski might be... He just broke loose just a little bit, and he collected the driver just behind. I don't know if that guy was able to hang on, but Edwards is now going to lose it as well. So Jablonski is going to go through and hold 6th position. Lewis, so much carnage here in race number 2.
Yeah, I think that was Fernandez that just got a little bit tapped. Brilliant, I must say. Hats off to Edwards and Jablonski, side by side, basically across the entire course of the lap there. Fantastic work from those two. Jablonski, of course, took a podium, took the runner-up, or took 3rd place, rather, correction. 3rd place in the race of the season back in Laguna Seca a couple of weeks ago. Not been quite as strong in the second race there, or Spa. He was actually running quite well in the second race there, but then issues. Oh, who's that off? That's Hunter Manley. Oh, massively off at Graham Hill. We're seeing more mistakes in the second race. I think people have got a bit overconfident, and believe me, it may be a short circuit. It may look really easy on a track map, but it's a hard one. Kerstetter trying to take second position away from Saxon. Nathan Saxon doing a great job there, now on the podium. How many podiums? He's had 1 podium this season. That was in race 2 of the season back in Laguna Seca, as Kerstetter, currently in that battle for 4th position with Nathan Saxon, has been on the podium back in Spa. So a bit of confidence coming into this round as Fernandez drops down the order again.
Yeah, I think for Saxon, we saw him going into paddock, really holding a defensive line, and maybe it's a little bit too early right now. We have 10 minutes left in the race. Ultimately, we're close to about a third way through. We're running it based on time and not on a set amount of laps. But ultimately, running the defensive line here early in the race might actually prove to be a negative here for Saxon. As Kerstetter's actually going to go wide here, so maybe that was the play. Unfortunately for Kerstetter. So now our top, our second, or 2, 3, and 4 cars are going to find themselves way back in the order, leaving Guindy all by himself with Saxon and Gomez now back behind. I think we'll see as Schettini might actually find a position here over Sviers, but I think he's going to be able to slot it in here as Sviers just lets him have that position. It's better not to let or to battle that in that corner, obviously, as you're off of you're off balance almost the entire time, just trying to hold the car. But man, oh man, Johnny Guindy's finding himself in a position to really lock in this 6th race win in a row. But ultimately, in the position that he's in now, we've seen a lot of these other drivers make mistakes on this course just based on the fact that maybe they haven't had as much time to practice. They might not know, how the car behaves, in certain positions. But not only that, maybe they're at the point now where they understand how the car reacts on the racing line, as we see someone just get a little too hard on the brakes there. They know how the car reacts on the racing line, but as soon as you add in some traffic and some other cars, it creates a bit more of a challenge. Then it puts you off balance, and then you end up, because this is quite a narrow track, right? When you're going through these sweeping corners, you're off balance, and then ultimately, if you drive it out wide just a little bit, pick up a little bit of grass, you find yourself way off. So as long as Johnny Guindy is immune to this, this learning that's going on in the back end of the field where people are figuring this track out, he should find himself in a position where he can run away from Saxon and Gomez.
Yeah, it's like I say, through everything that's happened, he's got a 3.3 second lead as Guindy, and whilst everyone separates themselves in the top 5, we've still got this massive battle. There was someone off in the background there. That was the Oof. That was Swank, massively off the road. Cadwalder's making his way up the order quite nicely, as is Edwards, who's battling with Spears at the bottom end of the top 10. Your top 10 order, Guindy, Saxon, Gomez Jr., rounding out the podium. Great drive from Short and Jablonski, the 11 and 10 up in 4th and 5th. Swears has been off the road, I think, and Martial has got by into 9th place. Short and Jablonski, like I said. Ibadi, great job as well. 14 car up in 6th place. Schettini, Edwards, Martial, and Swears rounding out the top 10.
Yeah,
Cadwalder made it back up to 12th place at the moment. Here is Swears dropping down past Kerstetter now as well. Maybe not the strongest race pace from the Texan.
Yeah, and I was just about to say, I was keeping an eye on Cadwalder and De Vries as they drop back a little bit earlier from 2nd and 3rd position all the way down to the back of the order. But it looks like Cadwalder's actually coming back. Just from the point that I took over, Lewis, when I started talking just now, he's been able to make up half of a second on Spears just ahead of him. So I don't know if that's just based on the fact that Spears was battling with Kerstetter. But now Cadwalder is not out of the order here. And one person to focus on really quickly is Ibadi, because we know that he had a few mistakes in race number 1. But look at where he's at now. He's in 6th position, just slotted in behind Jablonski, obviously 3 seconds ahead of him. But Jablonski's nowhere near short either. So if Ibadi has the pace and he's able to figure it out here, as Kerstetter is going to go to the inside, really deep angle, just the inside of this 16 car of Masael. He's now in a position where Kerstetter was able to overtake him, and it seems that the tires of the 16 car were cooked going into Druids.
Yeah, I don't think Swears is as much better as Cadwalder's also got by. There is Cadwalder, now on the back of Martial as well. Hunter Manley up into 12th place, also got by Swears. A few drivers struggling with tyres here. Only 6.5 minutes to go in the second race here at Brands Indy. Cadwalder, after an incident, for those of you just jumping in thinking, what's Cadwalder and De Vries doing massively down the order? There was an incident between those two. Hunter Manley is well involved in that, coming out of Graham Hill Bend, the 3rd corner on the circuit. And now they've dropped down the order. Cadwalder's doing an excellent job in coming back up the order. Sven De Vries, birthday boy, maybe not so much, down in 16th place, still scoring a few points, but the threat for their second place in the championship and that battle they were on. They came into this joint on points. That's coming under a lot of threat here. Cadwallader looking around the outside as we head through Surtees and up towards Clearways. A little bit of contact there between Martial as well. Oh, Martial over the grass. Cadwallader up the position. That is what I would call a off.
Yeah, man. I mean, Cadwallader definitely had a ton of pace there. You saw him catching on the outside there, and that's really what I'm talking about. A lot of these guys have talent and experience, on a plethora of tracks. But if this is one of their first times driving here, you eventually get to the point where you're comfortable on the racing line. But the second that you have a car next to you and challenging you, especially on the outside, it's hard to to figure out what to do there. So I think that collision was incidental. Obviously they'll take a look. The marshals will take a look back at that. But ultimately, Cadwallader is storming through the order here as he really wants to get himself back into the top 10, which he is now in 10th position. He was able to close a gap about 2 seconds to the car ahead, and now he has about almost 3 seconds to Kerstetter, who's currently in 9th, and then Edwards just ahead of that. So there is a bit of a split here in the field, but ultimately the guy to focus on is right now currently Edwards, because he has an opportunity with only 7/10 behind Schettini. But Schettini definitely has more experience in this series, as he has been in round number 1 and number 2, and Edwards is a new face in round number 3 here. But if Edwards can claim his place and show that he is he's working with the Skip Barber team and developing a bit quicker here as we're coming into the last 4 minutes of the race, he can really prove himself and continue to better his position, as I'm not sure who that was.
Saxon. It wasn't Saxon. I thought it was Saxon
Doman.
off into the barrier. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was Doman again. Luckily, he was getting out of the way of the race, as he is quite a bit further back. I think he's about a lap down. But man, oh man, this has just been an eventful race as we go on board with the race leader. And this is what I was talking about. The car just ahead of him, so I believe it's a red car. Gindy's is the yellow car that's in the middle of the frame. I think it's actually purple, not red. But Gindy's now coming up on lap traffic. So this is the car in, all the way in the back of the field. I think it's Swank. Yep. So Gindy's going to be able to slot in and pass without much of an issue. But lap traffic can always be a challenge, especially we just got off of a 24-hour stint doing the 24 hours of Le Mans, and that's basically a race filled with traffic. But we're not really used to it in this sort of format, right? Maybe 1 or 2 cars that you'll be able to pass, but that's going to be a bit of a challenge here for Gindy in the last 3 minutes if he runs into any more of that.
Absolutely. Jablonski, by the way, battle for P4. That's a tight one, only 0.3 of a second separating the number 10 car and the number 11 for 4th place. Short coming under a lot of pressure from the podium sitter from the first round of the season. Schettini and Edwards, like you say, very close. This battle here, 12th position and 11th position. Martial leading Swears. Hill will back up the order, the number 10 and number 11, battling it out to find out who's going to finish where inside the top 5. 2.5 minutes to go in the final race here at Brands Hatch. We're going to stay in the UK though for round 4. Don't you panic. Like I said, we're off to Silverstone next week for round 4 of the season. These are flying by, Elliot, and Gindy's enjoying his run at top.
Yeah, I think for Gindy, it's probably even going a bit quicker. He's, he hasn't been, he was challenged in round 2, but he hasn't been challenged here yet. Cadwallader was close on the back end of him, and I think, I really, obviously this is a prediction, but I think if Cadwallader could have held his pace and ultimately not made that mistake, whether that was him or Sven de Vries that caused that incident, he could have held that pace and potentially with Sven really run it to Gindy. Obviously Cadwallader has that 5 plate, but you have to remember that Sven de Vries qualified first for this race. Now he's back in 16th. So that, obviously that's not the progression that he was looking for, but I think this could have been the track if they could have held it together and had a few to no mistakes. This could have been the track that they could have brought it to Gindy. But I think it's worth mentioning as well that the qualifying positions were actually obtained in Daytona. So the Sven de Vries, if this would have been Daytona, maybe he would have been a bit quicker. But this is definitely a bit of a different track. It's a different scenario, and it's ultimately, these cars are probably feeling a bit like they're on ice through a lot of these corners. Not very stable, and ultimately just trying to find their pace.
Absolutely. It's pretty tight. We've got a couple of laps left to go to run here. Looking at Hunter Manley, Jordan Spears as well. Martial just ahead of this. It's a very, very tight battle. It looked pretty spread out not too long ago, and now everything's really tightened up in the final minute here at Brands Indy. It's been an interesting challenge for you, like you say, a bit different to Daytona, where we were supposed to be initially on the schedule. The run to Brands Indy, though, something different.
Yeah, Spears just he was just on the inside going into Druids, and then coming just down to the next corner, he was looking to the outside because he went to the inside in the corner previous, and he just didn't have enough room, and he ended up getting squeezed off. Didn't collect too much grass there, which is ultimately a good thing. But yeah, he was just got pushed back just a little bit as Edwards going to pick up a position on Scattini for 7th position, and now we're on board with Jablonski, who has found the back end of short now. So we're on the final lap. So ultimately, Guindy, that's it.
Number 6.
Number 6 is complete. But if we go back to, I believe that was Jablonski. Yep, we're back on Jablonski. Here he comes down the back straightaway. He doesn't have the pace to catch the car ahead. So Short is going to finish 4th and Jablonski in 5th. And now going to Scattini, these guys just aren't going to have the slipstream here to make up these gaps, even if, it was a 10th or so. Maybe we'll see a difference for Bear. I'm not sure if Bear just got into the back. Yeah, Martial's off the track, but I think Bear was able to find a couple positions there. Fortunately for him at the end of the race, but man, unfortunate situation for Sven de Vries and Cadwalder, and also Kerstetter. All three of those guys were high up there, but like I said in race number 1. Gomez Jr. is going to be sitting in the top 5 waiting for those mistakes to happen, and it'll get him on the podium, and there he is. 3rd position, Gomez Jr. And Guindy, we'll just go through the order now. Guindy in 1st place, obviously, 6 races in a row, undefeated in this series. Saxon, 2nd position. Gomez Jr. came in 3rd after big battles were happening in the top 5. Short in 4th, Jablonski 5th, the body 6th. Edwards 7th, Scattini 8th, Kerstetter in 9th, and Cadwalder coming back to round out our top 10.
Yeah, that's the first podium there for Gomez Jr. in the season. So finally starting to work out for him. Of course, before we see the results, if you want to take part in this championship, easy to do so. Go on to skipbarber.com/eRace-series or series. Obviously, Americans, I don't know what you say. Sorry, lad. With that, you get some excellent tutelage from the Skip Barber instructors, and believe me, that is worth an awful lot more than $20, which is the entry fee to take part in the qualifier. Fantastic stuff. If you want to get on the grid, please come along and take part. Qualifier next time is at Silverstone. Here is the race order: Johnny Guindy, Saxon, Gomez Jr., your boy, on the podium. Good shout from him. And then we've got that really close battle between Short and Jablonski, like you said. Ibadi, Edwards, Scattini, Kerstetter, and Cadwalder did get himself inside the top 10. Sven de Vries only managed to get back up to 15th in all of that. A few retirements from it. How was your first commentary experience of Brands Indy?
I almost wish that we did the longer orientation of this. It would be much better. Oh, it would be so amazing. But I think that this particular track really put it really challenged these drivers, right? It's something that you don't really, and we talked about this a lot, you don't really get comfortable at any point. You're basically just constantly turning and running through these sweeping long corners. So you have to maintain your pace. And the second that you make a small mistake, the cars behind are able to just slot in and pass by. And there's really not like a place that you can reset your speed where there's like a heavy braking zone besides Druids. But that's one place in the track. So this is a great track and it's fun, but it is very challenging. And I think that the drivers figured that out in race number 1 and 2 here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, if you want to come and take part, qualifier opens tomorrow, Monday, between 9 a.m. 11 p.m. Pacific time. God knows what that time is wherever you are. That is your time. So that's great for you, Elliot. No idea what time it is here in the UK. I think it's +8 or -8, whatever. I don't know. Either way, it has been a great run with us here in Brands Hatch. Again, we're back in the UK for Silverstone in just a week's time. And for those of you wondering when we go to the US version of Brands Hatch Indy, Lime Rock Park, penultimate round of the season, if you fancy a go at that. Thank you very much for joining us, though, Elliot Bishop, and alongside him, myself, Lewis McBlade. I did that the wrong way around. That's not very good. And we'll see you very, very soon.